On June 28, 2015, Dr. Teresa Sievers returned alone to her home in Bonita Springs, Florida. She had flown back late from a weekend trip to New York, where she had celebrated her mother's birthday. Her husband, Mark Sievers, and their 2 daughters had stayed behind to continue the family vacation. Teresa returned early so she could attend to patients at her holistic clinic the next morning. Just before midnight, she entered her house, unaware of the horror waiting inside. Within minutes of arriving, Teresa was ambushed. She was attacked in the kitchen and bludgeoned to death with a hammer. The violence was extreme. Her body was found face down, clothed in a black dress, and surrounded by a large pool of blood. The medical examiner would later determine that Teresa had been struck 17 times in the head with a hammer, confirming the brutality of the attack. The following morning, when Teresa failed to arrive at work, her co-workers grew concerned. They contacted Mark Sievers, who remained in New York. He then reached out to a trusted friend and neighbor, Dr. Mark Petrites, asking him to check on Teresa. Petrites entered the home and discovered her body lying just inside the kitchen. He immediately called 911 and reported that there was a hammer beside her and that her head had been bashed in. When detectives arrived, they noted the garage door was open and a suitcase inside appeared to have been rummaged through. Teresa's purse was also found disturbed on a bar stool near her body. Although the scene suggested a possible burglary, no valuables were missing. Even more puzzling, there were no fingerprints or DNA left behind. Investigators also noticed irregularities with the home's alarm system. Mark's mother, Bonnie Sievers, had visited the house over the weekend and said she had enabled the alarm. However, when she returned Sunday morning, it was off. Detectives later learned it had been manually disabled early that morning, hours before Teresa was killed. From the start, the murder scene raised serious questions. Though it looked like a break-in, the lack of theft and forensic evidence, along with the timing and method of the attack, suggested a targeted and calculated act of violence rather than a random crime. Dr. Teresa Sievers was a vibrant and deeply passionate woman, known for her commitment to holistic health and alternative medicine. Standing just under 5 feet tall, Teresa carried a commanding presence wherever she went. Her energy, intelligence, and compassion made her a favorite among her patients, who trusted her to not only treat their ailments, but also guide them toward a healthier, more natural lifestyle. She began her career in internal medicine, earning respect as a capable and thorough physician. Over time, however, she became increasingly drawn to holistic approaches, believing that mind, body, and spirit should be treated as one. This belief led her to open her own integrative health practice in Bonita Springs, Florida. Her clinic quickly grew in popularity, offering treatments that range from traditional medicine to nutritional guidance and lifestyle changes. Patients traveled from across the region to seek her help. Outside her clinic, Teresa was building a presence on YouTube and had ambitions of hosting a national health show. She wanted to reach a broader audience and educate the public about wellness and preventative care. Those who knew her described her as driven, inspiring, and always full of ideas. She believed in empowering people to take control of their health and well-being. Teresa met Mark Sievers, a nurse from Missouri, while he was vacationing in Florida. The two married and eventually had 2 daughters. Mark took on the role of managing the office and overseeing the family's home life, while Teresa focused on treating patients. To the outside world, they appear to be a strong and successful couple, a loving family with shared mission. But behind the perfect image was a future none of them could have foreseen, a future that would end in tragedy. Following the discovery of Dr. Teresa Sievers' brutal murder, investigators launched an intensive search for answers. At first, they considered the possibility that Teresa had interrupted a burglary in progress. Her suitcase appeared to have been rifled through, and her purse was disturbed. However, there were no valuables missing from the home, and nothing appeared stolen. Detectives quickly dismissed the burglary theory in favor of a more chilling possibility, a targeted and premeditated attack. One of the earliest clues pointing to a planned ambush was the home's alarm system. Mark Sievers' mother, Bonnie, had been taking care of the family's pets while the Sievers were out of town. She told authorities that she had armed the alarm system when she left the house Saturday night, but when she returned the next morning, it was off. Initially, Mark told her that the system was glitching. However, Detectives later discovered that someone had manually disabled the alarm at exactly 6:09 a.m. on Sunday, hours before Teresa returned home and was killed. With few immediate suspects, detectives explored all potential leads. They looked into disgruntled employees at Teresa's holistic clinic and individuals involved in her charity work, particularly troubled teen mothers she had tried to help. But none of these leads produced any credible suspects. Attention naturally turned toward Teresa's husband, Mark Sievers. While he had a strong alibi, he had been in New York with their daughters. Investigators brought him in for questioning. During the interview, Mark broke down several times, sobbing, hitting himself, and even talking aloud to his deceased wife. When left alone in the room, he was overheard saying, "Oh my God, Teresa, what could I have done?" Detectives found his behavior suspicious and overly theatrical. Mark eventually revealed that he and Teresa had an open marriage and were very occasional swingers. A search of his phone uncovered photos and videos of women he had been with, despite his initial claim of marital harmony. Neighbors told police they had frequently heard the couple arguing. Still, despite the odd behavior, lack of transparency, and marital issues, there was no direct physical evidence connecting Mark Sievers to the murder. At this point, his role in the crime remained a disturbing possibility, but it was still only a theory. A crucial breakthrough in the investigation came weeks after the murder, when detectives in Florida received a call from a police chief in southern Illinois. The tip pointed them to a woman named Rose, who had potentially vital information. Rose explained that during the weekend Teresa Sievers was killed, she had been at a friend's house when the friend's daughter mentioned her husband, Curtis Wainwright, had traveled to Florida to address an IT emergency for a friend. The timeline immediately caught Rose's attention once she heard about the murder and the involvement of Mark Sievers. Curtis Wainwright was not a stranger to the Sievers family. He was Mark Sievers' longtime best friend from Missouri. When investigators dug deeper, they were intrigued by how similar Wright and Mark looked. Both men shared remarkably similar grooming habits, including receding hairlines that were shaved, matching styles of facial hair, and even a similar way of dressing. These physical similarities led some to speculate that Teresa may have momentarily mistaken Wright for her husband in the dark. When authorities brought Wright in for questioning, he initially claimed he had never left Missouri that weekend. However, that alibi quickly crumbled under scrutiny. Multiple people, including Wright's own wife, confirmed that he had been away and unreachable during the time Teresa was killed. His absence was noted by several others, further damaging his credibility. This unexpected lead significantly changed the direction of the investigation. For the first time, detectives had a new name, someone with a personal connection to Mark Sievers and a possible reason for being in Florida during the murder. The focus shifted from a general inquiry to a more targeted investigation, and Curtis Wainwright became a person of serious interest in what was beginning to appear as a murder-for-hire plot. This section delves into the critical technological and surveillance evidence that strengthened the case against Curtis Wainwright and introduced a second suspect, Jimmy Ray Rogers. When investigators searched Wright's rental car, they discovered a GPS navigation device. Although it had been wiped clean, digital forensic experts were able to recover the memory. The GPS data revealed a detailed route from Missouri all the way to Bonita Springs, Florida, placing Wright in the area during the exact time frame of Teresa Sievers' murder. The GPS device was also linked to an email account associated with Jimmy Ray Rogers, a close friend of Wright. Rogers, like Wright, had a criminal record. Detectives soon uncovered surveillance footage from a Walmart in Florida, showing both men together during the weekend of the murder, further confirming their presence in the area. The investigation took another turn when Rogers' pregnant girlfriend came forward. She told police that Rogers had confessed to participating in the murder and had explicitly said that Teresa Sievers was killed with a hammer. According to her, Rogers instructed her to dispose of a pair of coveralls he had worn during the crime. She later led authorities to the exact location where the coveralls had been discarded on the side of the road, physical evidence directly connecting Rogers to the crime. Together, the GPS trail, the Walmart surveillance footage, and the girlfriend's testimony provided concrete proof that both Wright and Rogers had traveled to Florida and were involved in Teresa Sievers' murder. These developments significantly advanced the investigation and painted a clearer picture of a coordinated attack involving individuals closely connected to Mark Sievers. This section uncovers the full extent of the murder-for-hire conspiracy that led to Dr. Teresa Sievers' brutal death. Following his arrest, Curtis Wayne Wright chose to cooperate with investigators in exchange for a reduced sentence. In a detailed confession, Wright revealed that Teresa's husband, Mark Sievers, had orchestrated the killing. According to Wright, Mark approached her with a plan to murder Teresa, offering approximately $100,000 as payment for carrying it out. Wright explained that Mark feared Teresa was planning to leave him and take full custody of their daughters. Mark did not want to lose time with his children and was also facing the potential end of his financial security. Teresa's death would not only eliminate the custody issue, but it would also trigger a substantial $5.8 million life insurance policy in Mark's favor. These combined emotional and financial motives drove him to arrange his wife's murder. Wright told investigators that Mark provided the alarm code to the Sievers' home and laid out the entire plan. Wright and Jimmy Ray Rogers drove to Bonita Springs early Sunday morning and entered the home, familiarizing themselves with the layout before leaving and returning later that night to ambush Teresa when she came home alone. During his court testimony, Wright recounted the chilling moment of the murder. He said Teresa appeared shocked when she was attacked and initially may have thought it was her husband. According to Wright, she raised her hands in defense and asked, "Why?" before being struck multiple times with a hammer. These details confirm that the attack was calculated, cold, and brutal. Wright's testimony was a turning point in the case, revealing that the murder was not a random act or burglary gone wrong, but a premeditated killing driven by fear, control, and greed. The confession exposed Mark Sievers not as a grieving husband, but as the mastermind behind his wife's death. After Curtis Wayne Wright's cooperation exposed a murder-for-hire scheme, law enforcement moved quickly to bring all parties to justice. In February 2016, Mark Sievers was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. His arrest marked a dramatic shift in the investigation, transforming him from a grieving husband to the accused mastermind of a brutal crime. Jimmy Ray Rogers, the second man involved in the murder, was the first to stand trial. In October 2019, a jury found Rogers guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The conviction was based on physical evidence, GPS data, and testimony from his girlfriend, who had led authorities to discarded evidence linked to the crime. Curtis Wayne Wright, who had confessed and agreed to testify against both Rogers and Sievers, received a lighter sentence. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and, in exchange for his cooperation, was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The final trial was that of Mark Sievers. In December 2019, after hearing extensive testimony and reviewing the evidence of his involvement, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy. In 2020, he was formally sentenced to death. Though convicted, Mark Sievers had continued to maintain his innocence and challenge the verdict. In February 2025, a judge granted him an evidentiary hearing to assess whether he should be granted a new trial. As of now, he remains on death row, awaiting the outcome of further legal proceedings. This section captures the justice process that followed Teresa Sievers' murder and the enduring legal aftermath still unfolding years later. Dr. Teresa Sievers' life was one of passion, purpose, and a deep commitment to healing. Though her journey was tragically cut short, her legacy endures through the lives she touched, patients, colleagues, friends, and family. A pioneer in holistic medicine, Teresa was known for blending traditional and alternative approaches to help her patients thrive. She envisioned spreading her message of wellness across the nation, using both her YouTube platform and public speaking to empower others to take control of their health. Her sudden and violent death sent shockwaves through Bonita Springs community and the broader medical world. Those who knew her described her as vibrant, compassionate, and driven. Her patients mourned not only a trusted physician, but a friend and advocate. The case left a haunting mark on her daughters, who lost not just their mother, but also saw their father charged with orchestrating the crime. Beyond the personal tragedy, Teresa's murder became a landmark case in Florida's criminal justice system. Investigators relied on a combination of GPS data, surveillance footage, cell phone records, and cooperation from witnesses to crack a plot that was meant to be foolproof. The case underscored the growing importance of digital forensics in solving complex crimes. Though justice has been served in the courtroom, Teresa's impact lives on. Her work in holistic medicine continues to inspire health practitioners, and her story stands as a powerful reminder of resilience, justice, and the shocking depths of human betrayal. Ben Rennick was in his early 20s when his life took a defining turn. In 2011, at the age of 24, he reconnected with an old friend named Lindley. Their renewed bond quickly evolved into a relationship, and Lindley, along with her son, moved into a home Ben had constructed on his family's farm in Montgomery County, Missouri. The couple soon had their first child together, and by 2014, they were married. Both Ben and Lindley shared a deep connection shaped by tragedy. Each had lost their mother to illness, and Ben also experienced the devastating loss of his father, who died by suicide shortly after his wife's death. These back-to-back losses left Ben as the heir to the family farm, a property that had been maintained by his family for decades. Ben made the decision to transform his inheritance into something extraordinary. He converted one of the barns on a farm into a fully functioning facility for his business, Rennick Reptiles Incorporated. The venture quickly became a success. According to his friend Richie Burke, Ben was a pioneer in the reptile breeding industry. His name carried weight not just locally, but internationally. Burke described him as a well-known and respected figure in the community of snake breeders worldwide. This section of Ben's life reveals a man who had taken on immense responsibility and turned it into a thriving business. He had built a family, faced hardship with resilience, and earned recognition for his work. Ben Rennick appeared to be a man on a promising path, balancing his personal life with professional ambition. However, the life he had painstakingly built would soon be torn apart, not by accident or misfortune, but by a betrayal that no one saw coming. Lindley Rennick's personal journey included a focus on wellness and self-employment. She attended massage school and in 2016 took a significant step by opening her own spa business. While the launch marked an achievement in her personal development, it also introduced new financial responsibilities. As the business progressed, Lindley began to struggle under the weight of mounting expenses and loan payments. Her spa began accumulating debt, and the situation became difficult to manage on her own. According to investigators, Ben Rennick increasingly took on the financial burden of Lindley Spa. He began paying many of the bills to keep the business afloat. This ongoing financial support created visible tension in their marriage. The once strong connection between the two began to erode, strained by resentment and frustration. Lucas Geisler, a reporter with ABC 17 News, explained that the financial pressure formed a significant wedge in their relationship. What once had been a supportive partnership was now marked by conflict. As their marriage deteriorated under economic strain, Lindley's personal life became more unstable. Investigators later uncovered messages suggesting that Lindley was unfaithful to Ben. These messages revealed her involvement with more than one man. One of the individuals was Michael Humphrey, an old boyfriend she reconnected with during this time. Another was Brandon Blackwell, with whom she began a sexual relationship just days before the murder. Though these affairs did not initially lead to immediate suspicion, they revealed a broader pattern of instability in Lindley's personal life. Combined with the spa's financial struggles and the growing tension with Ben, her behavior began to appear increasingly desperate. This complex mix of financial hardship and personal conflict would soon take a dark and irreversible turn, one that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. On June 8, 2017, Lindley Rennick made a 911 call stating she had found her husband, Ben Rennick, lying in a pool of blood inside his reptile breeding facility. Her tone was frantic as she explained that he had failed to pick up their children, prompting her to go to farm. The facility, home to between 3,000 and 4,000 snakes, initially raised concerns among first responders. Missouri State Highway Patrol Master Sergeant Darren Haslag recalled the uncertainty, noting that responders feared a deadly snake could be loose in the building. That theory was quickly dismissed. At the scene, investigators discovered shell casings beneath Ben's body. Missouri State Highway Patrol investigator Devin Fowles confirmed that Ben had been shot several times in the back and once in the back of the head. The coroner later determined he had been shot 6 times and likely died within 2 hours of Lindley's call to emergency services. As police began their investigation, they spoke with Lindley, who appeared cooperative and forthcoming. However, she quickly pointed to Ben's brother, Sam Rennick, as a possible suspect. Lindley claimed that Sam had been upset over their father's will, which left the entire family farm to Ben. According to her, Sam had pressured Ben to divide the property but was denied. She described their conflict as deeply emotional and unresolved. Investigators followed this lead and interviewed Sam, who admitted he was hurt by the inheritance but firmly denied any involvement in Ben's death. He stated he could not afford the farm and had come to terms with the situation. His alibi was confirmed, and he was officially ruled out as a suspect. With no evidence linking Sam to murder, the investigation turned its focus elsewhere, seeking the truth behind the brutal killing. As the investigation progressed, law enforcement began identifying key inconsistencies in Lindley Rennick's statements. After verifying Sam Rennick's alibi and confirming he had no involvement in Ben's murder, investigators turned their attention back to Lindley. Her cooperation, which initially seemed genuine, began to unravel under closer scrutiny. Through analysis of Ben and Lindley's social media accounts and computer activity, authorities uncovered signs of deep marital strain. Messages exchanged via Facebook revealed that Ben suspected Lindley of infidelity. When confronted, Lindley admitted to being involved in an affair. However, that individual was away on a trip with friends during the time of the murder and was ruled out as a suspect. Digging further, investigators identified additional romantic entanglements. Lindley's phone and text records pointed to multiple relationships, including with Michael Humphrey and Brandon Blackwell. These discoveries began to reshape the narrative Lindley had initially presented. Her personal life was far more complicated than she had let on, and her account of events started to appear carefully managed rather than truthful. A major turning point came when the insurance agent handling Ben's life insurance policy contacted police. The agent reported that Lindley had started the process to claim the $1 million policy almost immediately after Ben's death. This raised significant red flags. Authorities also learned Lindley was attempting to sell both the family farm and the reptile business just weeks after the murder. Her urgency to liquidate assets added to growing suspicions. These findings painted a picture of someone possibly motivated by financial gain and personal escape. The evidence collected did not yet prove guilt, but it seriously challenged Lindley's credibility. Investigators, once uncertain, now viewed her as a central figure in the case, one whose story no longer aligned with the facts. As investigators delved deeper into Lindley Rennick's phone and message history, they uncovered a disturbing web of connections. 2 names stood out, Michael Humphrey and Ashley Shaw. Lindley had maintained regular contact with Humphrey, a former boyfriend and spa client, up until the day of Ben Rennick's murder. After that, all communication between them abruptly ceased, an inconsistency that raised immediate suspicions among investigators. Michael Humphrey initially told police that his reconnection with Lindley stemmed from a request by Ashley Shaw, the business manager at Lindley Spa, who needed stereo work. However, phone records contradicted the simplicity of that explanation. The frequency and timing of their interactions suggested something more serious. Investigators began to piece together a timeline that showed Lindley and Humphrey were in communication throughout the day of the murder, yet they had not spoken since. In parallel, police questioned Ashley Shaw. When pressed, Shaw admitted that she had helped Lindley obtain Percocet in an earlier attempt to poison Ben Rennick, a plan that had failed just a week before the shooting. Shaw also confessed to helping establish a false alibi for Lindley by sending texts from Lindley's phone, creating the illusion that she was at the spa during the time of the murder. Shaw agreed to speak openly only after receiving immunity from prosecution. Her statements, combined with Humphrey's eventual confession, revealed that Lindley had portrayed herself as a victim in an abusive marriage. This narrative played a crucial role in manipulating both Shaw and Humphrey into helping her. Lindley's pattern of deception, emotional manipulation, and calculated moves painted a portrait of someone orchestrating a murder behind a carefully constructed facade. What began as a tragic crime of sudden violence was now revealed to be the result of a coordinated conspiracy. The investigation took a major turn in January 2020 when Brandon Blackwell, Lindley Rennick's former lover, contacted police from jail. He had been arrested for violating a restraining order Lindley had taken out against him. While in custody, Blackwell confessed to a crucial detail. Lindley had told him, just 1 week before Ben's murder, that she had tried and failed to poison her husband. According to Blackwell, Lindley had crushed Percocet pills and mixed them into one of Ben's protein shakes. Though the attempt made Ben sick, it did not kill him. This tip immediately shifted the investigation. Police arrested Michael Humphrey, who had reconnected with Lindley in the weeks leading up to the murder. During questioning, Humphrey admitted he had provided a gun to Lindley, allegedly under the belief that she needed protection from an abusive husband. He also confessed to accompanying her to the Rennick Reptile facility on the day of the murder. According to Humphrey, Lindley brought the firearm and attempted to hand it to him, but he refused. When Ben opened the door, Lindley fired the shots that ended his life. As the case against Lindley solidified, police also arrested Ashley Shaw, the spa business manager. Shaw eventually agreed to cooperate in exchange for immunity. She confirmed Blackwell's and Humphrey's accounts, adding her own involvement. She had acquired the Percocet used in the failed poisoning attempt and helped establish an alibi for Lindley by managing text communications on her behalf during the murder. Together, these confessions formed the foundation of the prosecution's case. Each person's account aligned with the digital evidence and timeline police had compiled, turning a once frustrating investigation into a fully realized picture of premeditation and coordinated deception. The legal proceedings began with Michael Humphrey's trial in October 2021. During the trial, Humphrey admitted to being present at the scene, but insisted that Lindley was the one who pulled the trigger. Prosecutors argued that regardless of who fired the gun, Humphrey knowingly participated in a premeditated murder plot. The jury found him guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. However, after his conviction, Humphrey agreed to cooperate further with investigators. He testified against Lindley Rennick and helped authorities locate the murder weapon, which had been discarded following the crime. In exchange for this cooperation, his conviction was reduced to second-degree murder, and he became eligible for parole. Lindley Rennick's trial followed in December 2021. Taking the stand in her own defense, she claimed that Michael Humphrey had killed Ben and that she had no role in the shooting. However, her version of events was sharply contradicted by both Humphrey and Ashley Shaw. Shaw's testimony was particularly damning, as she laid out Lindley's prior attempts to poison Ben and her manipulation of others to create a false alibi. The jury found Lindley guilty of second-degree murder and armed criminal action. She was sentenced to just 16 years in prison, a punishment that Ben's family described as deeply disappointing, given the gravity of the crime. Throughout the proceedings, Ben's brother, Sam Rennick, remained a visible presence. He had not only endured the shock of being falsely implicated by Lindley in the early days of the investigation, but also the trauma of losing his brother in such a violent and calculated manner. In court, Sam expressed frustration with the outcome, but gratitude that justice had finally been served. His closing words reflected both heartbreak and resilience, a final tribute to the brother he lost. Following Ben Rennick's murder, the ripple effects of the tragedy were profound and long-lasting. Lindley Rennick's relationship with Brandon Blackwell, the man who would ultimately help expose her role in crime, ended in 2019. The relationship dissolved under a cloud of conflict and legal trouble, culminating in Blackwell filing a restraining order against her. By this point, the damage to Ben's legacy was already unfolding. Lindley sold the Rennick family farm not long after Ben's death, erasing a legacy that had taken more than 40 years to build. The property, once a symbol of generational pride and entrepreneurial success, was no longer in the Rennick family's hands. She relocated to Columbia, Missouri, taking her children with her. This move severed the family's roots in New Florence and left behind a community still grappling with the shock of the crime. Sam Rennick, Ben's brother, struggled to process both the personal loss and the dismantling of the family's heritage. He had not only lost a sibling, but also witnessed the collapse of everything their parents and grandparents had worked to create. For Sam, the emotional toll was immense, grief compounded by betrayal and the burden of unanswered questions. Perhaps most heartbreaking was the impact on Ben's children. Their father's life was taken in a calculated act, and their mother was found responsible. The psychological weight of that truth is a legacy no child should have to carry. While legal justice was ultimately served, the emotional consequences remain permanent. In the end, Ben Rennick's story is remembered not only for the shocking nature of the crime, but also for profound loss of a devoted father, a respected entrepreneur, and a life full of promise brought to a senseless end